Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a lifelong journalist. I've produced stories for ABC News, CBS News, CNN, and so on. I love learning new information, having thought-provoking conversations, and hopefully that's exactly what we're going to do once again here on this podcast. And our podcast series features my dear friend and the brilliant author, David Parker, joining us from San Francisco. David is the author of two amazing books, another one coming to you very, very soon, I'm sure. David is the author of Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. And welcome, David. How are you today?
I'm fine, Tom. Thank you.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Before we started the show, we were hearing about your travel adventures. It sounds like you've been having quite a nice time. And how does it feel to be back in San Francisco?
Well, I was in Paris for 3 weeks, and I'm so inspired when I'm in Paris, is why I go. And I was writing, and the French are like San Franciscans a little bit, but there's no homeless in Paris because they did a very strange progressive thing in France. Let's take care of let's come together as a community and take care of our homeless people and take care of the less fortunate. And they built all this housing on the outskirts of Paris. Well, that's almost a collective solution. It sounds like a concentration camp almost. And those housing projects all became slums after a while. But all the poor are living on the outskirts of Paris. You walk around, you don't see them. It's almost shocking, but for the wrong reason. And T.S. Eliot says, doing the right thing for the wrong reason is immoral. And that message really comes home.
Well, it's certainly a challenge that we face here, in many American cities. I know, when I visit Washington, D.C. and New York City and so on. So it's an interesting challenge. Well, we're welcome back to the US of A. And I know how patriotic you are. And, you've certainly educated me about our founding fathers, things I did not know. I just thought this would be a great time. We have shared several episodes with our audience. And now, we're recording this around election time. And I thought this could be a good time to kind of press the reset button and hear from you about what you see as the vision for your books and really even for this podcast series. Why don't you tell us what you have in mind?
Right, the vision for my books. I notice in all my writing, it keeps popping up, comes back. I think the founding fathers got it right. They wrote a one-page document called the Constitution with really good arguments on its behalf in the Federalist Papers. It's a general set of rules. You can go to Washington, D.C. It's on an art easel in a lobby of one of those buildings. You can walk up to it. It's on one page. It says we're going to vote for our legislatures. Congress can't pass the buck to administrative agencies. They didn't use those words, but you can't pass the buck. That's pure John Locke. The EPA and the Department of Education, they're not supposed to be making policy for the nation. They're not supposed to be writing law. Only Congress writes laws. So it's real simple rules like that. And the people will be elected with a bicameral legislation. And we did well under the Constitution for the first 150 years. And all of a sudden, 1933, we got it to our heads that we got it wrong. The government can be a great force for good. That our original notion, freedom from government, could be replaced with freedom with government. Government can do so much for us. And that's the direction we've gone. It's far away from the founding fathers. It's European socialism from where we fled. We're going right back to it. And now we can't get out of it. And that's the split in this nation in its politics, left and right. It can be about hundreds of things, but it's really about strict interpretation of the Constitution or a progressive interpretation of the Constitution. That is what progressivism is, moving forward from the Constitution and let government do all kinds of stuff for us.
Yeah, no,
and
it's interesting. Yeah, continue.
So actually, you have people running for office who not even qualified, but the nation is so disturbed. I guess I have to say this. In 2016, the polls showed Hillary huge margin of victory up until the last second. At the end, they lied, and people voted for Trump, not because they wanted Trump, but let's try something else. The two political parties are fighting each other, and even if they have something to say, they're not doing anything. It's as if they stood for nothing. They're not solving the problems the nation cares about. The whole nation cares about. High cost of healthcare, for example. They're not solving that problem. Let's try something new. So every election, that risk is there of putting in a populist or somebody completely unqualified for the job, because those who are qualified aren't doing anything. And that's what's happening right now. Democrats are so afraid of losing in the midterm House and the Senate that they're just saying and doing anything that's and not good. Biden says, I'm going to waive all the student loans. In fact, I would waive, and they want to waive the whole national debt. But you can't do something like that. And Nancy Pelosi runs off to Taiwan. I'm tougher than any Republican in office. Everybody told me not to go. I'll show them. I'll go to Taiwan and start a war if I can. That's how tough I am. They're just running scared, the Democrats. I'm not saying I'm voting for Republican even, just because I'm a San Francisco conservative. But that's what this election is all about.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. As you know, as one who covered the White House, way back in the 1980s, the first Bush administration for a year. And so was certainly attuned to what's happening, in the daily political news and the polls and what's happening, on the ballot and so on. And it's interesting, when Joe Biden first came into office, it sounded like he really was trying to bring us back to the 1930s, maybe not, not in terms of the Depression, but in terms of, said, I want to put together these big packages of programs costing trillions and trillions of dollars. And he certainly had his struggles trying to get them passed or not passed. But now we see his really low popularity rating. And, I always think back to James Carville, I think from the Clinton years. He said, it's the economy is stupid. And everyone, including liberals and Democrats, seem to be saying, Mr. Biden, we really didn't want those $1 trillion packages. We care what's going on with the economy. And we're looking for something different.
That's underlying the election also is the fact that America is really a moderate country. You wouldn't know from listening to the news or the campaigns. The voting districts are so gerrymandered that a Democrat is only running against a Democrat and a Republican only against a Republican. Well, who wins? The most liberal or the most conservative? Well, in fact, the country is not way liberal or way conservative. The whole country knows that we shouldn't be, a president or a political party shouldn't run for office by saying, I'll outspend my neighbor, but I'll outspend the other party 10 times. Just vote for me and I will spend trillions and trillions of money that we don't even have. And the nation is slowly coming to realize it's wrong.
And you certainly have reminded us who pays the bill at the end of the day, or who will pay the bill at the end.
And I'll remind you again, the middle class pay all taxes relatively. We should be taxing the middle class 50 to 70%. Then they'll get the message. They think they're not paying for it. They think the rich are paying, or they think we can tax the rich. And the rich have all read Robin Hood. And you can't get it from the rich. Even if they want to pay, their accountants won't let it happen. And you can't get it from the poor. The middle class pay everything. And that's one of my messages, that people should know that and now decide, well, you want to spend more money by borrowing because you're not taxing the middle class enough? That's how messed up it is.
Yeah. Well, I just want to take one moment to remind everybody, if you happen to be joining us midstream in this conversation, this is a San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin, asking the questions, and my dear friend David Parker, author David Parker, who is author of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco conservative, joining us from San Francisco. And when you speak about the way the districts have been gerrymandered, basically, and so that only extremes are elected, extreme progressives or extreme right-wing fanatics, I guess you'd say, brings me to a question. I know you've been doing some writing and some thinking about that concept of what it means to be woke in America. And also, again, President Biden has been saying MAGA, MAGA is a dirty word, and, throwing that acronym around. So what are your thoughts about those two
both of them have something to say. Their MAGAs, Make America Great Again, kind of what it really means with all these elections really mean is, do we interpret the Constitution? Do we stick by a few set of principles? That's what MAGA really means. Even if woke means, if you see racism, stand up and call it for what it is. Yeah, I'm MAGA and I'm woke in that sense. But people who are advocating that, they're on the fringe. So it turns out we have kind of bad people advocating, in theory, good concepts. And that's, so we have a vicious elections, but the ideas are essentially fine in both cases, but they're not being advocated by moderates.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What do you see any way out of that? Or, I mean, are we stuck with this now? Or?
Yes,
we are. That's not good.
You can't. That's the seriousness of 1933. I was on a talk show host. I was on a guest this morning, Tom Mullen's show, which is spread out throughout the nation. And he says, he asked me that question. And I says, no, once you make a huge step like saying government is a force for good, and we want government, you can't turn that around. Unless you get a consensus, like the consensus for Trump the first time, almost the second time. Had Trump been a decent person, he would have won the second time. Had Romney been a person or a relatable person, he would have beat Barack Obama in the second election. He thought he won. When he woke up in the morning, he didn't win. The public didn't find him palatable or had no feeling for him. But Barack Obama should have been like Jimmy Carter, a one-term president. Barack Obama just waltzed in a second term. But had, what's his name? Romney been elected, Trump never would have been elected. Romney would have been elected a second term, and we'd be going on, things would be much more normal. But that's why Trump is important. He's for the first time waking up the nation. We don't want him, but who do we want? And let's look around. We can't find anybody. Nobody's stepping forward who's a person that we can all get behind, a person of some integrity and some intelligence. Trump is like Schwarzenegger. He was a businessman, but he wasn't qualified. He had no political experience. You can't be a politician and have no experience. You can't play in a symphony orchestra and never learn to play the instrument. Mm-hmm. I mean, so he's not capable. I'm waiting for that person to come forward that I can go, I'll give that guy some money. Yeah. Jerry Brown should run for president. But he's too old.
I am surprised to hear that from a San Francisco conservative.
Well, I grew up in the same street with Jerry Brown, so yeah, I have to say that.
Good thinker, and
good thinker.
Quotes or recap what he shared. Your views are very similar to Jerry Brown's, actually, right?
Jerry Brown doesn't want to admit it, but he's really a classical conservative or a classical liberal like I am. He says you can't ask government to solve every single problem in the book. It's not, those problems are personal for the most part. Just ask government to solve things that it can solve, not everything. And the proof is, the war on poverty, we spent 23 trillion, 3 times what we spent all wars, including World War II. And now we're in debt. And the poverty, the needle hasn't budged. It's 15% then, 15% today. You can't solve problems with money. The nation has to come to that realization, and then a decent person will step forward, and maybe we'll have somebody decent in office. We haven't got there yet. So no, we're stuck with European socialism. We're stuck with spending 3 times what we take in.
Is there, do you have any advice for us in the meantime, as far as, you know, the work that we do, or, you know, you've been great about encouraging people to save and invest in asset producing or income producing assets. Is there something we can do in the interim while we go through this difficult period?
Well, my first book, Income and Wealth, says once you try to become financially independent, then you don't care what the government is doing. And you become independent by buying income producing assets with leverage. But big corporations and wealthy people, they're not waiting around for the government to come and take their money. It's not going to happen. Big companies, corporations have their money in tax havens out of the country. That might be my advice to Americans. Get your money out of here, because they're going to try to get it from you. Not really, but Apple is located in Cupertino, has a space station. Looks like their headquarters. It's not. They're headquartered in Ireland, and all their money is on Jersey Island, in a tax haven in the English Channel. Jeff Bezos hasn't paid tax in 20 years. You can't tax the rich, and stop even saying that. Just tax the middle class 50 to 70% and get it over with. And when you do that, they're going to go, what? Putting us back to the Middle Ages, are we? Let's find a candidate who's going to straighten things out. But we need a consensus in the nation to say that. Let's find a candidate who's moderate and will do the right thing.
Right.
That hasn't occurred.
Yeah, interesting. Great. Well, it's an interesting time station here. I guess that my last question for you, I think I've asked you this one every so often, is with all these challenges ahead of us, are you still optimistic?
Yes, that's one reason I'm writing. As a person of substantial wealth, I'm saying, gee, I'm not paying any taxes. Maybe I should tell people. So how can I be pessimistic when I'm not paying any taxes and I'm just having a good time, as are wealthy people? And the nation will, it started. Trump was the start, a false start. And as you said today, that people, even liberals, realize that Biden shouldn't be suggesting spending so much money. That's a good sign. That's the sign of optimism right there. If both sides agree, wait a second, we should we should live within our means. Parents should be teaching that to their children, and the government should be teaching that to the citizens. We're not going to spend more than you're going to pay us in taxes.
Well, as a lifelong educator, when you say this is an important lesson, I take notice, and I hope our viewers and listeners do as well. So I think we're out of time for today, but I enjoyed the conversation as always, and want to make sure I let everybody know. Be sure to pick up copies of David's books. You'll be very glad you did. They're mind expanding indeed about what's going on, and based on fascinating chapters of history as well. So they're great reads. Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. You can purchase them through his website, davidparkeressays.com, or you can purchase them through Amazon. So thanks again.
And let me just say, the books are rich in classical examples from the past of everything we're talking about today. That's part of the charm of this book, in my opinion.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Absolutely. So, okay. Well, great to see you, and thank you very much.
Welcome. Glad to be here.